It is Monday, June 9th, 2025, and you are listening to the Rivian Clubs of America podcast. I'm your host, Zach Winnick, and also the community director for the Bay Area Rivian Club, and I sit at the RCA national level on the tech team, bringing you all the latest information on Rivian Clubs of America at rivianclubs.org. This week, I am bringing you probably one of the best interviews I've ever had in 25 years of doing media production and radio and all of that. I actually had the opportunity to sit down with the CEO of a company called MEVCO, which stands for Mining Electric Vehicle Company, Matt Cahir, and we had a fantastic discussion about their operations. And if you haven't seen a MEVCO truck before or have heard of MEVCO, basically they take R1Ts, uplift them, and then put them into mines to go work in the mines. They use them as transport, they use them as repairs for the mining equipment. Pretty much anything that happens in a mine, it's done with an R1T providing support. It's pretty awesome. You've probably also seen their trucks. They are what they call MEVCO green. It's very bright. They have the bull bars on the front and the back. They got big old light bars, big old all-terrain tires. Yeah, if you haven't seen them, I will put a picture up on the screen right now for you to take a look at. And yeah, so I talked to Matt for about an hour last week. I am so appreciative of the fact that he took time out of his busy schedule to come talk to me about their partnership with Rivian, what they do to their trucks, how they utilize them, what it's meant to the crews that they have in the mines, and we kind of get a little nerdy about our own R1s at the end as well. It was a fantastic conversation. I hope you all enjoy it as much as I enjoy talking to Matt. So I'm going to roll the title and then we'll roll the interview. Hey everybody, welcome to the Rivian Clubs of America podcast. I am extremely excited to be joined by Matt Cahir, the CEO of MEVCO, Mining EVs. You in the Rivian community might have seen their bright yellow trucks, which you can actually see behind Matt to either side of me. I don't know which side it's going to pop up on. So welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Zach. Really happy to be here. And they're not yellow; they're MEVCO green. So let's make sure we get that right. We've spent a lot of money getting that green color right.
I think that is probably one of the best colors I've ever seen on a Rivian. Somebody took some spy pictures from the Rivian factory of the delivery vans that they were testing in that wrap, and I was just like, I need to have that on my car.
Yeah, we did it for a couple of reasons. Number one is the most important thing in the mining industry, which we're focused on, is safety. And, if you think about snowy environments, typically the mining industries use white vehicles. Well, in a snowy, wet, muddy environment, the white vehicle pretty quickly blends into the environment and is not that safe in terms of visibility. Versus the green that really stands out. There's not a lot of green grass in a mine that you would then sort of lose it, to the background. It also reeks of renewable, and it reeks of new technology. And let's face it, Rivians are pretty stunning no matter what the color. So putting it, doing a green paint job on it is really, really focused on that safety aspect.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, for the people out there that aren't too familiar with MEVCO, can you kind of give us like a little overview of like what you guys do? And
Love to,
yeah,
love to. It's
awesome.
my most favorite story. So MEVCO stands for Mining Electric Vehicle Company. We are a purpose-built company started in November of 22 with some seed money by a fairly large private equity firm called Resource Capital Funds that basically one of their funds invest just in technology for the mining industry. And they had been tracking the conversion of, or at least the fairly big major market shift towards electric and away from diesel in the mining industry in light vehicles. and really saw a huge opportunity there. The major OEMs weren't really getting there at the speed that the mining companies needed to get them there. And so this company was really started to enable that transition. And it's not just about dumping, a piece of hardware in a mine. That doesn't work. A mine's a very complicated environment. It's highly dangerous, and there's a hell of a lot of compliance and safety and process and protocols. And so, the vehicle forms one part of that. And so we saw a very big opportunity to deliver a solution around, what is hugely big change in technology for them. So that's how we were started. We don't do anything else. We just do light vehicles. In the US and North America, we call them pickup trucks. In Australia, we call them utes. We have a presence in both Bloomington, just beside the Rivian plant in Normal, in Illinois there, and we also have a fairly major presence in Perth, Australia. And so that's all we do. We basically take a stock standard vehicle off the Rivian line, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, and change it so it can be used in that environment.
Cool. So, how how did the partnership with Rivian come about? Like, did you guys evaluate other companies, and then like, how did that whole process work with getting Rivian on board?
So the mining industry is pretty much dominated by two brands of light vehicle, one being Toyota, which has probably got 80% of the global market, and the other one being Ford, the F-150, 250, through to 550, depending on the application. So what we did was that we, did a lot of travel around the world looking at various technologies in terms of what it would take to, transition a diesel vehicle into an electric vehicle. That was the first step. And then what was coming out of OEMs, in terms of a purpose-built electric vehicle. So we went down the path of basically dropping the diesel motor out of a Toyota Hilux, and then basically replacing that with an electric power plant. It's really expensive. You're working within the confines of a vehicle that's been built to do something very, very different, which is carry a lot less weight. That weight typically sits in the engine bay under the bonnet. And then so, changing that whole dynamic and putting heavy batteries in, and different drivetrains and all that sort of stuff really changed the dynamic of the vehicle. Yes, we had an electric vehicle, and yes, it operated pretty good on a road and okay off road, but we weren't happy with where the weight distribution sat. We also weren't happy with all of the things that you expect to get out of, electric vehicle like Rivian delivers. It does none of that. So really expensive supply chain, really not built for, or fit for purpose. And quite frankly, really expensive. And I didn't think that, we never wanted to be a car company. You need billions of dollars to do that. We learned a lot in that process. We got a lot of traction with mining companies, and we delivered vehicles with that. We also did the Land Cruiser, which is a much more robust platform, much bigger. Same issues. You're putting a hell of a lot of weight to move a heavy weight already. And again, the cost is really prohibitive. So then we looked at Ford Lightning. We looked at, and we worked with Ford for quite a long period of time. We looked at various European and some Chinese brands. And we kept on coming back to Rivian. And I tell you what, the really big differentiator with Rivian compared to everybody else, apart from safest platform in the world, the best, off-road package that you can possibly buy that's electric, bar none, is that they kept on saying yes. We kept on asking them things, and they kept on saying yes. And it was a huge differentiator to, the more traditional motor car companies that have got a lot of baggage, a lot of mouths to feed. They're not nimble, and they're not, seeing opportunity in markets. They're basically lazy and slow. And, that's not what we wanted. A bit like walking into, the analogy I draw is, it's like walking into a tech company in the valley in California, which is what Rivian was, versus, walking into a, 80-year-old attorney's office that's had the same books in there for 60 years and has that sort of old smell. That was the huge difference. So Rivian kept on saying yes. We loved the story.
Fantastic.
We did a lot of testing, and it just kept on winning every single time. And, our customers are delighted as a result.
That's fantastic. So, um, what when you were working with Rivian, like what I guess like what kind of modifications are you guys making to the R1Ts, and to make them safe for mines, and then to help the guys that are actually in there?
Yeah. So let me point out a couple of the features of the vehicle itself as it comes, if you like, off the production line, which is incredibly great for us and our application. So just to fill your viewers and listeners in on what we do, we supply vehicles to both surface operations and also underground operations. So we have vehicles operating, a mile down and 4 miles out from the portal underground at the moment. We have them operating in the biggest holes in the ground in the world, the biggest mines, copper, gold, iron ore, in all manners of climate and in all manners, everywhere from the Arctic Circle to the absolute desert, pretty much near desert conditions and extreme temperatures of the Pilbara in Australia. So, that's sort of number one, right? And so a vehicle that can exist and thrive in those climates is a really important part of our equation. The next piece is durability and reliability. And the big thing about the Rivian is if you look at the picture behind me, I mean, basically everything below the top of the tire is waterproof. And that's really important in our environment. Underground is almost continually wet the whole time. It's got a very high saline content, so the corrosion is a really massive issue with any piece of equipment that's deployed down there. It literally eats from the inside out. As well as in other mining areas which are typically remote. They're never, you're not going to find too many mines. Salt Lake City would be the exception, but really in terms of major cities, you're not going to find a mine there, right? They're normally in a long, 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 very remote area, a long way away from civilization in most cases. So having a vehicle that can travel through deep water is really important. Having a vehicle with that underbody protection and where we can raise the vehicle to the highest level of any production vehicle is really important to us in terms of the off-road or underground, requirements. Think of a very big haul truck, 200, 300-ton haul truck.
Yeah.
By the way, that flag is not really quite at eye level of the driver in the haul truck. He's sort of much higher. That flag sort of goes up so he can see it. But they drop stuff off the back of it, and these vehicles are on the same roads. And so, being able to avoid big rocks and boulders and corrugations and other things that sometimes appear on those tracks and roads is really important. And the underbody protection is like most critical. So you got a Kevlar bottom on the bottom of that. And that's like really important. So you got water that's been kept out. You've got the underbody protection, which is basically protecting the occupants of the vehicle as well as the battery, which is really, really important. And then if you see that vehicle there, I've got a bull bar. We call it a bull bar. Americans call it a brush bar. I don't know why we call it a bull bar. There's not a lot of bulls on the road in Australia. It should be called more of a roo bar. But basically, it's there to protect the front of the vehicle and all of the camera systems and all of the intelligence that sits on the front. You can barely see it, but I've got one on the back of that vehicle as well. So typically in a mine environment, they always reverse their vehicles in. So they back them in so that they're always facing out. And sometimes, the guys, it's a touch sort of thing, at least in the old ICE vehicles. You got a lot of cameras here and a lot of sensors that will tell you that the wall's there, but some drivers still want to actually touch the wall, so we've got that on the back. We've got in the gear tunnel, we've got any manner of setups for tools, basically. So it's a really good place to store tools. So think of it this way: there may be an AM and a PM shift of maintenance guys that are using this vehicle. On one side, they may have the PM shift and his tools, and on the other side, the AM shift. So it really depends on the configuration. We have a light bar there. That light bar is connected into the can of the vehicle, and on that is working lights in the rear and the side. You've got a beacon on the top, and you've got an audible alarm for reversing, which is also really, really important. So that's all connected in the can. So the vehicle's put into reverse, the audible alarms and the lights are going to let everybody know. And so that's a really important part. We also integrate this vehicle into the mining systems of the big OEMs, so Caterpillar and Komatsu and Liebherr and all these big guys that have got the big trucks, proximity detection, so that these little trucks don't get run over. That's a really important part, obviously, of the safety of the vehicle.
Oh yeah.
Inside, we've got all manner of safety systems. So we've got isolation for the 12-volt system, which basically sits on the front of the bar at the front of the car. And then we've got high voltage isolation. So in case of an accident or an emergency, they can isolate it. It's not meant to happen that way, right? Rivian's meant to run all the time. But in, mine side, it's very, very, very safety centric. For the vehicles that go underground, we've got a fire suppression system built into the battery. And the battery's inherently safe. I don't think Rivian's ever had a thermal event ever in a production delivered vehicle. That's why we love them so much. But we've got that in there as a backup. In the fleet
Yeah.
vehicles, they don't have what they call state of charge. In other words, you can't limit in a fleet vehicle the level of charge that vehicle has, but we can through what we've done in terms of the enhancements. And that's really important. If you think about an underground mine, there's two ways to get to an underground mine. One is in a shaft and the other one's down a ramp. In a shaft, we drop the vehicle on a slingshot under the lift. It goes down, it never comes back, right? It's down there for life and it gets buried down there at the end of its life. In
Oh,
a
wow.
ramp, they drive in and out, but it's typically, it could be a couple of miles down and it's going at, at an 18-degree angle. It's pretty sort of severe and sharp. And you don't want a vehicle without regen, going down that ramp. You don't want that. And in fact,
Yeah.
a lot of the danger that mining companies address is runaway vehicles. Hot brakes going down. What are the backup systems? They've got 2 and 3 redundant systems on braking to stop that eventuality. Because the last thing you want is a piece of equipment coming down hot.
Right.
Where all the people are down the bottom, right? So
Yeah.
so we only allow a certain amount of charge, and that gives us full regen on the way down and a lot of control. They don't use their brake pads. In that
Nice.
environment, mines are going through a lot of brake pads, like a lot. And they don't do that in this vehicle. We're getting energy, right? Free energy, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's
We've
fantastic.
also got speed limiting and geofencing, so that in a mine site you may have 9 or 10 different speed limits, and you don't want the vehicle completely governed to 40 mile an hour or 20 mile an hour because they go out on the highway and they go down to the camp. But in the mine, it's really, really important that speed is adhered to, so we can basically, depending on what zone they're in the mine, limit their speed. So
That's awesome.
there's a lot. Oh, and the big one is the roof is not glass. So
Ah, love it.
we replaced the glass roof. We have both a Kevlar and steel option there. We've done a huge amount of testing in terms of dropping weight on the vehicle and protecting the driver, because that's how accidents happen, right? There could be it could be following a haul truck and a big rock falls off. Any manner of things can happen. So we're really all about protecting the driver. We're about making sure that everybody else in the mine knows where this vehicle is. We're about creating a lot of the audible features that are important in underground environments as well as on surface. And then really about protecting the vehicle too in terms of all of that protection. The underground one has fender protection that goes from that front bull bar down the side of that left wheel and then hits on the steps. We typically have sliders installed there down onto the steps. So you've got that full protection on the front as well as on the back.
That's fantastic. One of the questions that somebody in the community asked, shout out to Karen, she wanted to know if you guys keep the tow hooks on the front of the truck.
We don't. We basically replace those and we use that as the actual attachment point for the bull bar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And then I don't if you can't answer this question, totally understandable. How much weight did you guys test with on the Kevlar roof?
So I've got to get I can send you that. I listen. I because it was all lab tested and videoed, and
Got it.
it's like it's one of those sort of like a smack testing type of thing where they do the whole slow motion and everything. It is
Yeah.
they call it a bullet, and it's basically not a bowling ball, but a very heavy weight that's dropped on it. So yeah, I can definitely provide that too. I just
Cool.
don't know off the top of my head.
Awesome. I was just curious because you mentioned it,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I wonder because I know somebody's going to ask me, like, did
Yeah.
you ask him this?
Yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah. No, we definitely have it. Happy to share. I think for a
Awesome.
lot of fleet uses, whether it be government, mining, construction, defense, any of that sort of stuff, the glass roof
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, how have the guys that are actually in the mines, like, received the RPTs?
Oh my God, it's like Christmas. I want you to imagine the vehicles that they drive today, right? So the tech in those vehicles hasn't changed much in 30 years. You got
Yeah.
guys that are working in pretty much off-road environments, so bumpy, corrugated roads, washboard roads. I think the common term. Um, some of the feedback's like really interesting. If you go and sit in the cab with them and go for a drive, and they'll tell you, "Listen, the first day I drove the Rivian, I didn't have a sore back. I didn't go home at night time and my back was aching, and I couldn't wait to come in the next day and get in the vehicle." And anyone that's driven a Rivian knows that it's a really awesome thing to drive, right? Just anyway, think of these poor
Right.
guys, bouncing around all the time. Their teeth are rattling in their head, and all of a sudden they've
I
got
can't even
this
imagine.
incredibly sort of cloud based ride, really, really important to their health and welfare. So that's number one. Number two is underground. We're trying to eliminate diesel, right? Because diesel particulates cause cancer. And,
Oh, yeah.
we don't want that happening, right? We just don't. So having a vehicle that doesn't, spew out exhaust the whole time when they're working near it is a really, really, really great outcome for them and what they're breathing. So that's number one. Number two. Number three is if you can imagine, a V8, diesel going past them all the time and the noise that would make in a cave, which is effectively what an underground environment is, it's really loud, like really loud. And so these poor guys are either walking around with, earphones on, which is an inherent safety risk, right? Because they don't know what's coming next. And so, having that no noise, having that no diesel, having that smooth ride, having that level of safety now that surrounds them. With the amount of airbags, the amount of protection. You got vehicles that are not rolling over. The biggest issue in a mine is light vehicles rolling. You got all that weight down low. You've got that ability to raise the vehicle. Think about this. We preset it so you stop the vehicle and it can go down on its haunches, right? And so they can pull their tools and everything off the back without this whole reach up business where you're really stressing your body. So it's a much, much, much better environment for the worker. It's a much more economical environment for the mine owner or operator in terms of the cost and then the payback. And also, it's
Yeah.
the most safest, right? The biggest risk in a mine is an incident of any description. It stops the mine. That's tens of millions of dollars in production every day. The systems that inherently come on the Rivian, pedestrians, if someone walks past a Rivian, you can see them, right? You can't see that on a normal vehicle. People get hurt. So it's a really, really great solution for everybody.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love to hear it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's exciting, right?
Um,
I mean, it's
yeah, it's
exciting
it's
when
super
you can
exciting.
take a
Like,
piece of technology and make it purposeful to actually, save lives, to actually give people a much better working environment, to actually get a great economic outcome. I'm not sure what can be better than those things.
absolutely. I 100% agree. And then the fact that, like, despite I mean, I'm going to get slightly political, so forgive me. Despite the fact that people are always, against mining and everything, but then to be able to bring just because of like the amount of pollution and depleting the natural resources and everything, but then to with bringing an EV like a Rivian into that and help cut down on the greenhouse gases and help cut down on the pollution and everything, like it's just fantastic, and it goes to show that, like, those companies are actually listening and like, hey, we're doing this and this is increasing, you know the environment and the safety for anybody that is in there. So yeah,
You got
it's
to give it to the mining industry, right? I think of all industries, the mining industry is the most advanced in terms of its own self-regulated and self-directed, focus on elimination of greenhouse gases. That they're doing that themselves. There's no one making them do it. They're doing it themselves. These very, very big mining companies. The thing that I draw your listeners' attention to, Zach, is that in the world, there's only two sources of everything that we've got around us. It's either grown or it comes out of the ground. It's mined. There's nothing that comes from anywhere else, right? Just so we're really clear. So mining is an incredibly important part of how we live and how we operate and what our house is made of. And the computer that we're watching this on, the screen, the helicopter transportation behind. I mean, I could go on, and your
Yeah,
background picture there, pretty much everything's been mined. There's nothing there that's been grown. So,
that's true.
I'd sort of draw. I think there's a lot of education and a lot of misinformation. Mining is a very, very big scale exercise, and in the past, they've only had diesel engines that are big enough to do that. Right? They are spending, hundreds of billions of dollars on converting all of this equipment into, either electric or hydrogen based or whatever it is that is not going to emit all of this pollution. And quite frankly, there is no electric vehicle without mining. That's where copper comes from. It's where pretty much everything that goes into that vehicle comes from. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
copper, lithium, all of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
awesome. So speaking of that, and speaking of energy, you did mention that like you can charge the trucks up to a certain percentage, and then the ones that actually go into the mines that aren't dropped down the shafts, you use regen. How do you guys normally charge them? Because like as you were saying earlier, like mines are like out in the middle of nowhere, and then, like I'm thinking of the guys like out in Australia, like that are out in the bush, and there's just there's nothing out there.
Yeah. So, a lot of mines are at the end of the grid. There's one sort of power line that goes a long, long way, and they're sort of subject to greyouts and blackouts and whatever else. In the past, they've used very, very large diesel generators to create power at mine sites and campsites. Um, there is a massive, massive shift at the moment into, all of the things that we'd like to see, right? Solar, wind, thermal, and they are developing extremely large capabilities to do that in terms of how they generate energy and store it. um, it's everyone knows this, it's a long road to get there, but it's a bit silly installing, electric vehicles and then running them on a diesel generator, right?
Yeah,
That doesn't sort of make a lot of sense. So,
right.
but it's definitely a step. So we've got mines that have done both that we're working with at the moment. They've got a much bigger plan for what they want to do. Installing infrastructure in a mine is a difficult thing. If you think about the fact that, a mine is moving you can't put in a lot of permanent infrastructure, because of the inherent danger of what's in the ground and what's running over the top of it. So there's a lot of planning and a lot of work that goes into where that charging infrastructure should be, what the generation is, how it's going to be generated, what their energy needs are, and obviously storage is the big one. So they're doing it though. They're absolutely doing it. I can come up with 150 examples straight away of extremely large solar and wind capabilities that are going in at the moment with our customers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really
That is
is.
absolutely fantastic.
Re-
That's so cool.
really is.
Yeah, because like that also indirectly and also inherently helps those industries as well. Because if
Yeah.
like these companies are out there deploying this or trying to figure out a way to deploy it like in a temporary situation, like the companies that build like the turbines or the solar generators and everything, like
Yeah.
it's all one big like
It
circle. It
is.
kind of like everybody's helping everybody.
100%. And the one thing that these guys have got typically in mining environments is typically there's a good amount of solar energy, right? Sitting in the middle of the
Yeah,
desert or on the top end of Australia or somewhere. They've typically got a lot of land that they can leverage and use. It's not like a city trying to do that. And so yeah, listen, it's a massive investment.
yeah,
Changing the entire way in which you do this is not a but the economic outcomes and the environmental outcomes are really important. And the biggest thing that I've seen in mining in the last sort of 15, 20 years is that they're really focused on their communities. They're really focused on indigenous populations that they work with based on where they're located. They're really, they've got a conscience for how they operate in those communities. They're very reliant on those communities for services, for workforce, and indeed the environment. They're really, really reliant on that because that's where their product comes from, and they've got to look after it. And so it's a really, I don't know of an industry that you could mention that would be more advanced than mining in terms of moving to renewables, moving to EVs, and really investing extremely large amounts to do it.
yeah. So do you Do you think that it will get to the point where they would be able to start replacing like those bigger,
Yeah, they're doing it
those
now.
300-ton trucks and
Yeah,
everything? They have them
yeah,
now.
they got them now. They're running them now. So,
Oh, wow.
so I think there's two things that's happening. Number one, autonomy is being introduced at a extremely rapid rate. And what that does is that gives massive economic benefit, as well as safety benefits, right? They're typically controlled from an operations center, 3,000, miles away, like a long way away from where it's all happening. So you've
Yeah.
got autonomy, and then you've got, basically introduction of electric or hydrogen based on the brand, and you get a lot of benefits very, very, very fast from that. So yeah, they are moving at light speed drills. They're all, there's a whole lot of electric versions now. So, LHDs and, underground tip trucks, all of that sort of stuff is now very much moving to that environment. We're still,
That's
the one
fantastic.
thing about mining is that, it takes a long time, right? There's a lot of work to do with risk assessments and emergency management protocols and, all of the things that you got to do in the supply chain in very remote areas to support, that type of deployment. It's not a matter of just dumping a vehicle and saying, see ya. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of training.
Right.
There's a lot of driving an EV is different to driving an ICE vehicle, right? Really different.
Yep.
Much
Yep.
better, but it's different.
Yeah.
And so people need to be trained in that. So yeah, there's a very big shift, Zach. It's pretty,
Awesome.
it's pretty extraordinary what's happening. Really extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's a shame that the general public don't know more about it, because I think they'd be inspired by what the leadership and global mining companies are doing today.
Yeah, I mean, just even like I had no idea. Like I was like everybody else. I'm like, oh yeah, great mining. But then like in doing the research to jump on here with you, like I was just like, oh my God, like there is a lot like that a lot of people don't know, or like there are a lot of misconceptions about what's going on out there. And it's awesome that Mevco and all of that can kind of by using a Rivian, you know getting out there in the community. I know that some of the team is on like a road tour right now
Yeah.
in Canada and the US
Yeah.
to kind of show off what they're doing with the R1Ts. Um, it kind of like opens everybody's eyes. Like I learned so much just from our conversation right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
but then also like through like just seeing what you guys do and seeing like the mining industry in general. Like I have a friend whose dad worked in a silver mine in Arizona, and just he just hearing his stories. This is 15, 20 years ago. Like EVs weren't a thing, and seeing even like you said, in that amount of time, how far it's come and like how it's evolved. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he might have worked in one of the mines where we are at the moment. We're deployed in Arizona in a silver mine down there. So it's really funny. We get a huge amount of inbound photos of our vehicles out in the wild. Whether they're on the way to a customer, whether they're on a roadshow that you mentioned. We did a
Yep.
roadshow, similar one in Australia, and we're doing it again at this end of this month, where we drive from Perth up to the Pilbara. That's 3,000 kilometers, right?
Yeah.
And we're using public infrastructure to get there, which is even extraordinary when you think about just that. Um,
Yeah.
and then we're up there, and it's amazing the amount of photos of, people are taking photos of the vehicle, they're charging at a roadhouse on the highway, and people love to see them. It's
Oh yeah.
extraordinary. And every time we're charging, we end up with this crowd around us. They want to know what it is, what's going on. So yeah, so it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's awesome. I love to hear that. And especially because, you guys are in Australia and probably have the only Rivians in the
Yeah.
country. And so I mean, I'm going to put on my marketing hat for a second. Like it's great for Rivian too, because it builds up that demand for if and when they ever eventually get down there. Somebody can be like, hey, I saw one of these,
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's really
This
cool.
vehicle was
Just out of
this vehicle
curiosity.
was
Oh,
designed, right, to do what we're using it for. And
exactly.
listen, one of the things that your listeners may be really interested in, because we've only just done this, is one of our customers has an operation in the far northwest of Australia, in a very salty environment, like really salty. So
Yeah.
we tried mimicking that environment in North America to understand where, we would get that salinity and what was the impact on the Rivian vehicles. And so we went to Rivian and said, where is the data that relates to the saltiest environment in which you've got a vehicle operating? And interestingly, I'm not going to mention the state because some people may get upset, but there's one particular state that has extremely cold winters and there's a lot of salt put down on roads. And, in a lot of cars, that salt ends up being pushed up into the vehicle and it freezes in there and sits in there for a lot of the winter, right? Because you don't actually get that thaw, and it's basically eating the crap out of, a lot of vehicles. So they end up as rust buckets. And we were trying to understand what that data was as it relates to Rivian. And Rivian said, we just don't have any, there's no, pattern that we can find where there's corrosion happening in our vehicles. And a lot of it's because of that sealed, the water's not getting in, number one, but number two, that Kevlar plate is helping a lot. So what we did is after 6 months of use in this high salinity environment, we did a tear down on the vehicle in Australia. We did it only a couple of weeks ago, and we got photos. It looks like it's brand new. Like everyone's shocked,
That's amazing.
shocked, because you've got these other vehicles that are like, you can almost put your hand through them after 6 months, and you've got this vehicle that's brand new. And that was after 6,000 kilometers. And, I think it was deployed for probably 4 of the 6 months up there. But we're going to do that regularly, take photos, take measurements, and really track, that durability of what Rivian's building, which is pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love that because I actually on a previous podcast that I hosted, I don't know if you ever saw or heard of this story. There was a guy, his name is Michael. He lives in North Carolina, and
disappeared under the mud.
Yeah, it floated 100 feet down the street and was covered. And I think the story was that Rivian took possession of the truck just to kind of go through it and repair, and they found like little to no damage on the
dry.
truck. Yeah,
he
opened the door and it was perfect on the inside, and he was able to drive it. He was able to drive it off.
It's unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah,
so
it's unbelievable.
The version I heard, which may have a little bit of marketing flair added to it, was that he was walking down the road of where it should have been and it wasn't there, and he was walking past and there was this big pile of mud like over on the side, and you couldn't discern that there was a vehicle there, and he had his key fob. And the vehicle woke up as he walked past, and it was the only way that he knew it was there. I don't know if that's
exactly
is that
what
right?
happened.
Yeah. I mean, amazing, right? Amazing. Really cool. Super cool.
So hearing you talk about doing the salinity test in Australia, like it makes perfect sense that like the car would have been perfect by when you look at it. So
I mean, it was a terrible disaster what happened in North Carolina, right? And there's a lot of people lost their lives and everything else, but and it's probably not something that, you want to actually, really sort of promote, if that makes sense, because of that misery that was sitting behind that event. But in terms of a piece of technology, can't imagine any other vehicle on the road.
It doesn't get any worse than that, for sure.
No.
Yeah. All right. To kind of get away from that a little bit. Do you own a Rivian?
I do. I sure do. My problem is keeping my wife out of it. So she's not a car person, right? Never has been. And she sees a car as a necessary evil of going from point A to point B. Doesn't enjoy driving too much. I've got to book it now, like literally book it, because her car sits in the garage. And mine's gone continually. So she likes sitting up high. She was in a Ford before. She likes sitting up high. She just loves how easy, and it's a really relaxing environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
On these US highways where it's just craziness, it's like this little oasis that, it's really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and you're in Virginia. The drivers out there are inherently worse anyway.
Well, it's more Maryland than Virginia, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
That's true.
Apologies to everyone.
I've driven from Virginia through Maryland up, up the coast, and not my favorite. Not my favorite. Just out of curiosity, what's the spec of your
the R1T, one of the originals with a quad drive, pretty much everything loaded on it. The story there is that I was a very early adopter of the Tesla X. I love that vehicle. I was grandfathered in for unlimited charging, free for life, and
Model S
they were
around in
trying to,
2014.
get me off that for a long time, offering me all sorts of stuff. I got in the
Oh yeah.
Rivian and I never drove the X. The X sat in the garage forever, and all that kept on happening is that I was paying the damn, county on the personal property tax. I just got annoyed at the end. And
Yeah.
even with free charging, I just said, no, I don't want that anymore. I spend all my time in the Rivian. I love it. My neighbors got one now. My best friend down the
Awesome.
road's got one. Like, everybody loves this vehicle.
Awesome. Did you wrap yours in MEVCO green?
No, but I have had, that vehicle there that you can see. That vehicle's actually at Sudbury at one of our large customers, Vale, fourth largest mining company in the world. We've got vehicles there underground and at surface, and I was lucky enough to have, one of the demo vehicles that went up there here for a while. It's amazing how many heads you turn with that vehicle. Like, it's pretty extraordinary. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, in any color, not just the green,
it's
but
true.
yeah, I can't go one day without going. I mean, even up here, I live just north of San Francisco. I live in Napa, and I mean, I can probably look out my window right now and see a Rivian drive by.
Right.
That's how many there
Yeah.
are up here. But like, even when I go in a parking lot,
Yeah.
like people still stop me
Yeah.
and like ask about it.
Yeah. Starting here.
So yeah,
Can I ask a question? Do you have the Rivian
yeah.
Wave in where you are?
I can probably get 3 out of every 10 people to wave back at
Oh,
me,
no.
but I wave at
Oh,
every single Rivian I
really?
see.
No, no, no. It's
Yeah.
8 to 9 out of 10 here. And it's only those one
Nice.
or two that don't see you. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm becoming friends just through waving of people that I see all the time, the same people. Like, I suppose
Yeah.
it was like a motorbike thing, and then it became a Jeep thing, and now it's a Rivian.
It was like a Prius
Yeah,
thing, then it
yeah,
was a Tesla
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
We're the coolest of them all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree
yeah,
1,000%.
yeah,
I mean, obviously.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. I've kind of run out of questions to ask you. I feel bad.
Wow, don't feel bad. Feel great.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
mean, I've learned so much about what you guys are doing, and I've like absolutely enjoyed talking to you this entire time. I
same,
mean, we've
Zach.
been going for about 40 minutes, and I think we'll just kind of wrap up right
Yeah.
now. And if you want to, if there's anything that you want to promote from Mevco,
Not really.
okay, cool.
It's not.
I always like to leave
Yeah, but I mean, we're very, very
do the
focused,
podcast
right?
thing.
We know exactly who our customers are and who are the
Yeah,
people that on that path. We do a lot more than just the vehicle. We do obviously the upfit. We do all the training. We do the charging infrastructure, the planning of where it's going to be. We do all their risk assessments. Like, there's a massive piece of work that sits around that, and it's taken quite a few years to build that. Just for your listeners, I think that the Rivian is by far the most capable vehicle in the world. I think that what they're doing at Rivian in terms of what's coming down the pipe in terms of autonomy and all of the things that are just so exciting and that will have massive benefits, leveraging machine learning and AI and all the other stuff. The security aspects of that vehicle are second to none. And the safety, the most important thing of all is, I've not, touch wood, I believe that putting a workforce in these vehicles is the most safest place for them of any vehicle on the road. And that's the way I think about that for my family. And so, well done to RJ and the team there, Dagan and Tom Solomon, all those guys at Rivian. You're doing a phenomenal job. The software is just so exciting. That's the big thing we didn't just say, Zach. I should just add on.
oh yeah,
This
yeah.
is really important, right?
You're
So,
distracting me with all this other cool, all
yeah,
these
yeah,
awesome
yeah,
stories.
yeah. If you think about our customers, right, they're in really remote regions, like super, super remote regions. Um, we can diagnose and see everything that's happening with that vehicle for every second of its operation, right? If there's an issue, whether it's a 12-volt battery or something, right? There's always going to be something because it's a piece of equipment. It's a lot less than ICE vehicles because you've got 200 moving parts versus 2,000 on a diesel. But we
Yeah.
can basically, over the air, work with Rivian to understand what's going on in that vehicle, potentially deploy or at least, provide some advice in terms of a fix straight away. And if not, my technicians are already, in flight on the way there with the exact part that's needed, if a part is needed. And that's huge savings to us, to the customer in
Right.
terms of downtime and, having vehicle available, as well as the data that comes off it is just quite extraordinary. So massive, massive advantages there. So yeah, everyone should be super excited to be in the Rivian family. It's the right family to be in. If you haven't been to the plant and you actually get the opportunity to go, I've been there with customers now 6 or 7 times. It is the most unbelievable place to go, and I've seen it grow twofold since I first went there and where it is today.
Yeah.
It's
And
real,
it's getting
it's
bigger.
unbelievable, and the robotics and the autonomy that's going on in there is super exciting as well. And most Rivians first charge is entirely renewable, right? Coming off the line, that's pretty cool too.
Yep. Let me ask you this. What do you think about, and I don't know if it would be capable to do it, but maybe you guys could do something like using something like an R2, or or even maybe bring the R1S. Do you think that either of those would be applicable to what you guys are
Yeah, for
doing?
sure. I think that we're really, really focused on the pickup truck at the moment. I think that there's definitely applications for both of those vehicles that you talked about. So, I mean, a mining company has got a lot of different types of operations. If you think about it, you've got your sort of heavy in pit usage, where you've got
Yeah.
maintenance crews and explosive crews and drilling crews and all manner of heavy applications. And then, as you move away from the pit, those applications and duties get lighter, right? You may have catering in the camp that are running on sealed roads. You may have transport of workers to, one of the portals or somewhere else. And so, yeah, there's lots of applications for lots of different vehicles, and 100%, that's where we're going to go. We're not just focused on a single application, single solution, but
Right.
we've spent a lot of time perfecting this vehicle to operate in this environment. We've got, another good 6 months to 12 months to really get it. Now we're moving from trials to fleet replacements, and that's really the big lift. And so that's where we are. So yeah, I agree. I think R2 is going to be incredible for Rivian. I think that they're well over 100,000 orders already.
Oh yeah.
They've got massive investment going into that. The market is screaming for it. A quality product like Rivian at that price point. Come on, amazing.
Yeah. It's gonna be
You
incredible.
guys are
Like,
gonna be you're gonna be busy, mate. Busy, busy,
oh
busy.
man, I can't wait. I want to see my chapter up here in the Bay Area, like of Rivian Clubs of America. We're at we're at about 300 members right
Uh,
now. I want to get it to 1,000 when R2 comes
easy,
out. That's my
easy,
goal.
easy, easy, easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Zach,
All right,
keep
well,
on doing what
I
you're doing. You're doing a great job.
you too, man. Like I told you, I am blown away by what you guys are doing, and I absolutely love the mission that y'all are on and all the work that you've been doing, and it's fantastic.
Fun. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come talk to me. And if you want more information on MEVCO, you can check out mevco.com and follow them on social media and all that good stuff. They got
100%.
some good videos and everything. And Matt, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Thanks, Zach. See you soon.
Sounds great.
Okay.
See you.
Bye.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed having that discussion with Matt. Like I said, he is extremely passionate about what they're doing, and obviously it shows. And I hope you guys all learned something really cool about how capable our R1s are, just for the fact that they can go into a mine and provide all that support for the crews that are working tirelessly in those mines all across the world. And yeah, special thanks to Matt for taking an hour out of his busy day to come nerd out with me about what they're doing. Special thanks also goes to Penny, who is their head of public relations. Special thanks to the team out that runs their LinkedIn page as well for basically instantly giving me Matt's contact information and really helping bring this interview to life. It was absolutely fantastic. If you live in an area where they are conducting their road show, where they are showing off the R1Ts, I highly recommend you just go check them out just to say hi and say that you heard about them on the RCA podcast. I think it'd be really cool. And then that way you get to see some really cool things and meet some really amazing people. So special thanks again to Matt and all the team at MEVCO for hooking it up. Basically, I'm just like, I'm not going to try to be professional about that. Like, I'm just like super excited. Like, I did that interview a week ago and I'm still like riding the high of how awesome that was and how great it was. Yeah. So, again, special thanks from here to everybody out at MEVCO. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Rivian Clubs of America podcast. I do want to mention that this episode is brought to you by Amp IQ. EV charging can be a lot to manage, but that's where Amp IQ comes in. As your owner representative, they work with property owners and businesses to make sure your charging stations run smoothly every day. From the first install to daily operations, they handle the details so you don't have to. Learn more at ampiq.tech. Also, we are looking for sponsorship opportunities for anybody that wishes to sponsor the podcast. You can email podcast@rivianclubs.org, and we can definitely talk some more. If you have anything related to Rivian or EVs in general that you think would fit our community well, I would be happy to open a discussion and talk to you about that. Anyway, you can find me on social media at Zach Winnick, ZAKWINNICK on X, and at Wild Wattage, WYLD Wattage on Instagram. You can also follow Rivian Clubs of America on both X and Instagram. On X, we're at Rivian Clubs, and on Instagram, we're at Rivian Clubs of America. To find out more about memberships at Rivian Clubs of America, you can definitely check out rivianclubs.org. Kind of newly redesigned. We've got our new events calendar on there, as well as a page to show you where all the chapters are located so you can find your local chapter. If there's not a chapter near you, definitely email admin@rivianclubs.org and we can help you set up your own chapter in your own area. So pretty cool. So thanks for listening, everybody. I've got a couple people lined up. We're just working on some scheduling for the next episodes. Some really cool guests. Don't really want to give it away right now because I want to keep you guys listening. But just more people from the Rivian space and the EV space, and working on some pretty big interviews as well. So we're going to see what happens with that. So just stay tuned to all the social media channels that I just gave you for more information. And definitely, as always, check out rivianclubs.org. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you all in the next episode.